Welcome to the Veterinary Project Podcast, episode 129.
Welcome to the show created by vets featuring absolutely no pets. This is the Veterinary Project Podcast, hosted by Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light. Our resident veterinarians have swapped out their stethoscopes in favor of microphones to bring you the Veterinary Project Podcast, a show focused on real conversations, aimed to connect this amazing profession full of remarkable people. Through the sharing of collective stories and wisdom, and connecting over the many unique challenges we face, we invite you to join our community of veterinary professionals leading intentional lives. And now, here are the hosts of the Veterinary Project Podcast, Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light.
Welcome back to the Veterinary Project Podcast. Yours truly, Dr. Michael Bugg, Dr. Jonathan Light. Mike, we're recording on a Friday afternoon. It's springtime or close to if you're still in Canada. They're trying to fight it out, winter, summer, winter, spring. What's the weekend looking like coming up for you?
Well, it's going to be a good one. When you said this, okay, I'm flashing back here. University, undergrad, and vet school, especially up here in Saskatoon, like we really have earned our springtime, right? When it comes, people just flood outside, and NHL playoffs, first round starts. I loosely follow NHL at best now, but first round of playoffs is fun. I remember I would go study on the roof, right? Because it's finally like the sun is shining. It's finally got some punch to it, right? Like it's hot again. This is typically, especially in undergrad, you're coming into that slog of finals. So I remember when that turns in the weather, you get up on the roof, study. It was good times, carefree living back then.
I was thinking about that. And sometimes you'd study on the grass or the brown grass just to get outside and do something different. And this year, literally, we had white snow covering the ground yesterday morning. You're going, come on, darn it. It's the time. Let's go. Let's get into spring. And then you watch the Masters tournament last weekend where it's absolutely beautiful down in Georgia. And you're going, oh, man. Yeah,
that's a beautiful course. But no, other than that, I'll tie a bow. Last week, we talked about contracts, and I said we were in, I don't want to say a sticky situation on a real estate deal. Like we were totally in the right, but doubling down for everyone that resolved, at the 11th hour and all of that on just how important having the T's crossed and the I's dotted on those contracts are. So that's moving forward. I will be making many trips out to your lovely province here in the next while as we kind of renovate a building and get it performing.
That's exciting. Congratulations to you and your partners involved in that. Do you think that if you didn't have the contract and the place that it would have been, you'd be in a whole different world right now?
Oh, tough to say. I mean, the deal could have fell apart. Yeah. And I mean, that wouldn't have been like catastrophic to anyone. It just means, the deal falls apart and you move on with your life. Like there wouldn't have been a huge loss incurred. It just would have been opportunity cost, a bunch of time spend a little bit of money on the due diligence that would be sunk and, that would be gone. Yes. But yeah, having the contract just keeps that on the rails. And it is funny for some reason, deals that those last few points are, like you've talked about big items, like what is the price of this apartment building, and you can start hundreds of thousands of dollars apart and you find that middle ground. Okay, cool. And then it can come down to just some of the stupidest little stuff at the end where it's like, in the grand scheme, this means nothing. Like, let's just
then it's ego, pride, time, legacy, everything else involved. And then that's your job, whether you're a seller, a vendor, or buyer, to be able to put that down, breathe and walk through it, use all your negotiating tools to understand what that other individual wants so that you can hopefully fulfill it in a meaningful way that actually still makes sense on a contract.
And it's funny, like mentioning the ego for sure ties into the conversation today. Just sometimes we're negotiating with ourselves and it's like our own ego. I'm listening to an interesting, I guess it was a keynote he's a doctor in psychology talking about the different versions of ourselves. Your authentic self, which is you as a child, you get wounded, you experience some things, and you put up a wounded self, and then our ego comes along and it's designed to just start trying to protect us from all those things. And it's interesting, just our conversation with Jillian, we bring money into that. Our ego flares up, a lot of interesting stories can be told.
I love it. Well, look at that. You walked us right there Jillian Carr is joining us today from Steady Gait Planning. Jillian and I work together. So Jillian just noticed all of our readers. She works with us at Mosaic Veterinary Partners, helping facilitate our benefits packages. And then also on the personal end, we've now done business with her regarding critical care insurance. So Jillian is someone that we've got to know closely over just under the last year here. We're going to get into it more into the conversation. But for an individual that's looking for relationship built financial support and understanding where they are in their veterinary career, whether it's a student, early grad, or years into practice, and wanting to identify next steps towards financial success, whatever that looks like for you and your family. Jillian came to the surface for me, just under a year ago, and she's been fantastic. And I really wanted to get her onto this podcast to help discuss the elevation of education within the veterinary space and what she's doing, both from a contract standpoint, debt standpoint, and then education into the challenges of life. I think this is a lady that I have rarely seen come from the outside of industry and make such a quick impact. So pretty impressed. Jump on it.
Before you go into the bio, I picked up on something. I didn't really know this. In the conversation, you had said, did you guys meet on opposite sides of a negotiation? Is that like how you first met?
It's not. No, we met through actually Animal Health Link and our partners over there. And we met through them last year at the CVMA. But this happened this spring where we ended up negotiating against each other. So she was helping out a student in the negotiation where, I didn't know that Jillian was on the other side of that equation. So it was kind of fun.
Yeah. And so the only reason I brought that up is like, you do this so well. And I think people need to pick up on this is just because you're negotiating with someone doesn't mean that you're adversarial, right? Like sometimes people be like, oh, you're on opposite sides of the table. You hate each other. I've witnessed you do this a million times with someone where it's like, I don't even want to use the word conflict, but you're sorting something out and you turn it where you become like best friends with that person and you form a relationship and then you go on and you do all sorts of business together.
Yeah. If it's the right individual and it's for the right thing, then again, adversary or controversy where you can't look at that person afterwards, it just equals to badness for both. So let's look at it and how we best help each other. And this was one of those situations.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Thanks. Look at us go. Let's get on with it. They weren't there to listen to us. They aren't listening to us. They want to listen to Jillian today. So getting into Jillian's bio, Jillian Carr is the driving force behind Steady Gait Planning, a financial planning practice offering people in Canada, in the veterinary community, a place to feel educated and empowered by their financial journey. Jillian has spent the last 16 years in the financial services industry, 8 of those years working for a leading financial services company, and the last 8 building Steady Gait Planning. Building a practice in a male-dominated, antiquated world has been challenging. Jillian learned to truly follow her authentic self and ideas. Jillian is no stranger to diversity in life and finances. Watching her parents divorce at the age of 19, navigating a mother with mental illness, 15 years later, seeing her dad, her career and life advisor, pass away due to complications from a traumatic brain injury, all while trying to build her business during the height of the pandemic. Jillian is a designated financial advisor, is an active member on the Board of Advisors Association, and is an ally and mental health advocate in the veterinary community. Though we didn't get into all the details, you are really going to enjoy this conversation with Jillian Carr, and I hope we have her on again. Enjoy. Jillian, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Excited to have you on. For all of our listeners, I want to start this way. It's a little bit different. At the CVMA this summer, which is the Canadian Veterinary Medical Association conference in July, Jillian's name first came onto the radar. And it's a very small industry. Western Canada, even more such. And all of a sudden, ever since that conference, it seemed like on a weekly basis, I was hearing Jillian's name. I'm going, who is this lady? And it was coming from all over. It was coming from industry. It was coming from private practices. It was coming from academia. It came from all of a sudden one time on council, I was chatting and Jillian's name come up. I said, how are you doing this? So my first question, Jillian, for you and joining our podcast today is, who are you and how the heck did you get it so ingrained in the veterinary industry? It is so impressive coming from outside in.
Yes, thank you. I mean, it's not without a whole lot of hustle, but the hustle is not all sparkle, right? As Post Malone says, it's pretty dull. So vets have, truthfully, they've always been a part of my life. I grew up show jumping horses. I grew up on a cattle farm. And anyone that knows about horses will know that a veterinarian is showing up at least once a week.
Just the
So
way it goes.
yeah, just the way it goes. So I actually always thought I was going to be a veterinarian. That was truthfully the goal. I loved spending all my time and money on horses. But when I was 13, one of our cows had a uterine prolapse and my dad was out of town on business. And he said, well, call a vet, just call one and they'll come help you. And that vet came out and she threw a pair of coveralls at me and told me to sit on a bucket. And I had to hold the uterus as she shoved it back in. And at 13, I decided I was never going to be a veterinarian.
So that went the exact opposite of Dr. Bug up there, who said, I'm in. You're like, I am out.
I was out very quickly at that point. But I continued with horses and I got into finance. And my dad, he just said, you just want to find people that you want to work with. And after spending 8 years with a corporate insurance company, my horse's massage therapist got into vet school and she said, Jillian, we need help. We literally don't know what to do with our money, with our debt, with insurance. The people that come talk to us are intimidating. Just be real with us. And so I went to University of Calgary and started working with some of the students there. And it seemed to have traction. People wanted to learn about money. How do we get out of this debt? And then it just escalated across the country.
Okay, so then if I'm hearing correctly, then starts in Calgary and now you've gone nationwide, only in Canada, North America. What does that look like? And for our listeners, I think broadly speaking, then we'll get into some of the specifics. What do you do with veterinarians? What is your role?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's definitely across Canada. My licensing is for certain provinces across the country. There's very few that I'm not licensed in, but I work with 4 out of the 5 vet colleges now. I don't speak French, so Quebec is not an option for me, but I do have relationships in the US now. And so we do a really good job of referring each other clients if I need support in the US and they need support in Canada. So it's been a really great networking business as well to help. But essentially what I do is I ask about people's fear around it. Yeah. I mean, we develop our habits and feelings, emotions around money by the age of 7, right? By the age of a young age, we've seen our parents fight about money or not talk about money. Or maybe we have a single parent that tried to decide, do we pay this bill or this bill to put groceries on the table? Yeah. And we don't even know that we make decisions financially because of those financial traumas or successes. Yep. And so what I try and help veterinarians do is understand their feelings and their stories around money so that we can better understand how to plan for them, right? Because everyone is so different.
Mike, go at it. I see you smiling over there.
I'm going to derail your episode on you. I love this topic. I'm so excited we're going here. I have to jump in and be like, what are some of the common ones? The hundreds or the thousands of clients that have sat across from you. What are some common themes that spring up when you're chatting with a veterinary student or a new veterinarian or even an experienced veterinarian of these money stories that they're holding on to just so tightly that are maybe not serving them or even pushing them backwards?
Yeah, I think truthfully, it comes from finance industry is the one that I hear the most, is that I went to the bank to apply for a line of credit and the banker said, why are you going to vet school? You're not going to make any money. And it instantly puts this down feelings on these poor veterinarians who want to help, right? And this is the way that they can get financing. And then they're immediately told, well, why don't you just go be a human doctor? And it's my job to show them and help them realize that that's such a myth. You can do very well successfully. You can make $200,000 a year and have $0 saved. And you can make $50,000 a year and have $1 million saved. It comes down to how you choose to spend your money. It's all about habits, dedication, all of those things.
Interesting. So do you predominantly work with new grads, with students, or a full mix experience, new and?
It's honestly now it's mixed. When I first started, it was all new grads. That was what Steady Gait was built on. Like I always say, Steady Gait was built by veterinarians for veterinarians, because it wasn't my problems that I was solving. It was their problems that I was providing solutions for.
Yes.
And so when I talk to students, it's like, tell me how you feel about your debt on a scale of 1 to 10. How are you feeling? And I could have a student that has $20,000 of debt and not sleep at night because that's the most amount of money they've ever owed. Right. And then I have some that like $300,000 of debt, if they have like a non-funded seat, that are like, oh, I'll know, I'll pay it off. It's no big deal. And I think it's so interesting because it's how we have developed around money, right? Like we have zero financial literacy in Canada. So we have to create our own money stories based on experiences that we see within our friend group, our parents, their group of people. And it's so stigmatized. Like if we could ask someone, how much do you earn without it being offensive, we would learn so much more about what we want to actually do for a living.
Absolutely. And you and I were both at the university at WCVM, so the Western College of Veterinary Medicine here. This is a few weeks back, and was given a talk, and then we shared booth space and the joy of back and forth with students. And one of the things I really found interesting is that students themselves, they're getting into contract time, talking about negotiating, getting to their first role, and they don't even want to talk about that money discussion. They don't want to talk about it between themselves, even though they hear this or they hear the rumor, but it's never anything concrete, and people are very scared to share that concrete knowledge. Have you felt the same?
Absolutely. When I do lunch and learns or dinner and learns or like webinars, even now, one of the questions I ask is about this stigma of talking about money. And I ask students, I say, how many of you will talk to each other about the amount of debt that you owe? And everyone like raises their hand, like, yay, this is amazing. We all talk about it. I'm like, that's because you're all in the sinking ship together. You know, you're all in the same spot. But when it comes to contract negotiations, if you actually negotiated a successful contract, whether it was you were able to bump up your salary, you were able to negotiate the non-compete, or whatever it was, how many of you actually shared that with your friends and your peer group so they can learn how to be successful? And everyone just looked at me like deer in headlights. It's like, we don't want to share what I did, right? And I don't know if it's just because we're not trained to talk about it, like we're not educated to say, oh my gosh, you should try this tactic, right? So having that conversation about negotiating your contract, to me, is just showing them it's just a conversation. Both the employer and you need each other. They need something from you and you need something from them. It doesn't need to be a hot argument. It's just, here is my situation. This is why I think I'm worth this. And the owner can say, well, this is why I think you're worth this. You know, it's just talking.
Yeah. I want to jump in on this because I find this fascinating. Any sense, like from your perspective, why are we sharing the negative, the debt? Okay, I have this much debt, but not sharing the positive, AKA I earned this much money. Like, why do we feel the need to hold that close to our chest? You know, in your opinion, I'm going to throw my opinion out there and you can agree or disagree or riff off that. I sometimes see, you know, net worth equals self-worth, and people will attach those two. And so if my paycheck is worth less than Jonathan's, I am worth less as a person than Jonathan. I'm not saying that's true. I'm saying that's a story I will hear sometimes. So I just want to throw that over to you and see what do you see? Follow-up question, any tactics to, like, for the students especially, how do we squash this and like liberate them and set them free to, like, it's okay to have these conversations?
Yeah, I think there's so many. I mean, we're humans, right? And some of us have egos, and our egos get bruised that our friend negotiated more money than us because I think I'm a better veterinarian. Some of it, I think, is just jealousy. And I have a friend who's a psychologist. She's wonderful. And her and I talk about this because when we have a really exciting opportunity come, we know that we can phone each other and we're going to celebrate each other. And it's coming from a really great place because we both want to see each other succeed. But we're also in our 40s. I think when you're in your 20s and your 30s, you're still trying to figure out who you are. And so we look at our friends, like when we're younger, we're trying to impress our parents, right? We don't want to get in trouble. We want to impress them. Then we turn into teenagers and we want to impress our friends. And I find it's not until we hit like 25 or 30 that we go through a quarter life crisis, which is actually a real thing. And you start to realize, wait a minute, this is what I believe. And I want to support myself and have a same support group. But it takes time to find those people that you feel comfortable and confident and not jealous that someone is doing better than you. And I think that also stems from social media. We like live in this world of, you know, there's people that will post, oh, I bought a Tesla, or, oh, I look at my brand new $1 million house that I bought. But what we don't see is all the struggle behind the scenes. And no one talks about the struggle unless you're a veterinarian with $150,000 of debt, because they're in the struggle together. The success, though, we are afraid to talk about successes.
Great points. When we look at Jillian 2023, and I believe this is your 8th year specifically in the veterinary space, is that correct?
Yeah.
What would you say has evolved in that 8-year stretch? Do you feel we are getting ahead, behind, neutral? What does it look like from your perspective?
Oh my goodness. So I have seen incomes change so much over the last 8 years, like since 2014. It was like vets were making in Calgary, we're getting contracts for $75,000.
Yep.
Right. And yeah. And I build insurance plans. So I could look at vets from 2014, their plan then to a new grad's plan now. And I can see the income changes over the last 8 to 9 years, which is so important because it's showing there's change in the industry. It's showing that entrepreneurs and business owners are wanting this to be better, right? They want to make it sustainable. So the incomes are changing, definitely. I think contracts are changing. I think everyone is realizing that you can work a 4-day work week and still have a really fabulous career. The clinic will be like still hopping. It's just shifting our mentality from that hustle mentality. Right? Like if you are caught working after 5 in Europe, people are like, what are you doing? Why are you being so North American? We're supposed to enjoy our weekends and enjoy our time with our friends and family. And I think we're starting to see that here where that work-life integration, I don't believe in work-life balance. I think there's an integration that there are days where you need to put in 100% because that is what you need to do. And there's days now where the industry will allow you to be at 60% because you need to be at 60% and someone else will be the other 40 for you, right? Like people are wanting to work.
We could get into a debate on the 60 and the 100
Yeah.
or the need for wellness days or days off.
I know.
Which is super important as well. Yeah.
But the industry is changing. I think
that I agree fully, which is amazing.
Yeah. And I think there are people that are saying like, I want to be a mentor. I want to help these young veterinarians. I want to help them be entrepreneurial, which is so important because I think for a few years, I saw it. None of my clients wanted to be business owners. They were like, nope, I don't want this. It seems way too difficult. But now, because they're seeing organizations come out that are like brands that are built on them. Like I saw one on social media where they're building a wine bar in the vet clinic. And I'm like, right? It's awesome. It's like a representation of who these people are. The brand is about them. And that's now giving veterinarians and young veterinarians an identity that's bigger than just, I'm a veterinarian. Yeah.
How about on the education front related to experienced veterinarians, those that have been out for a little while? You walk through, what is a 6 or 10 page review of where they are currently, financially, debt, stress, next stages in life. What are you seeing now compared to maybe a couple of years ago for some of those clients?
Yeah, I think what I found is clients that are, or veterinarians that are years 5 to 7 is when they want to start buying. That's when they're confident. The imposter syndrome is kind of at bay. They're like, we have these opportunities now. And that's when the plan really changes. Because now we're planning for, okay, well, should you incorporate? Like some of these vets that want to locum, you know, that some have gotten not great advice of, well, you should incorporate because you're self-employed. Well, that's not necessarily true.
Yep.
And so I think there's an education piece for these associates and these veterinarians who are 5 to 9 years out about what does planning look like now that your debt is gone. So we've helped you get rid of your debt. Now you have $1,500 to $2,000 of cash flow that we need to reallocate.
Yes.
Where does it go?
Well, so let's use that as an example. Let's go with that. Somebody that's, you know, in between 5 to 10 years old, have paid off whatever amounts of debt they are. They're now into a mortgage. They may or may not have a child or two. What do you do, Jillian, to spur that conversation and really get to the center of next steps, especially for that experienced vet?
Yeah, I think you have to find the pain points, right? Like we have to talk about what does the next year look like for you, right? Because I think that if we plan based on large numbers, if someone says to me, I want to have $3 million by the time I'm 60, well, it doesn't mean anything. Like, okay, it's just a number, but what does it actually mean to you? Because we're so emotionally tied to our money. We work so hard to earn it and to save it and not to lose it.
Yep.
So we have to find the pain points of, I need you like to pull it out of them of like, what's a goal a year from now? If we meet a year from now, 3 years from now, what do you want to accomplish? And if that might be, okay, well, I want to buy a second property, or someone said, I want to buy a house in the United States. And that's what we've talked about, but we've never actually planned for it.
Yep.
Okay, well, you have the money to do so. So why don't we start planning for it?
Excellent. And do you figure that by getting to their pain point, you get further ahead by finding and defining what they actually want?
I think so. I think that being vulnerable there's so many levels to be vulnerable with, like, and money is one of them. It's one of the most stigmatized topics, just like mental health. And if we can break down those stigmas, then the truth of why they want to do these things becomes really important.
Yep.
You know, and I think if we talk about kids, like if there's little ones involved, the conversation can go pretty dark of, well, what if you're not here? Right? Like, what if you die? What do you want for these kids?
Yep.
Because now it's not just you. Now it's not just you and your spouse. Now you have tiny two-leggeds that we have to plan for. Right? Normally with their vet students, I'm planning for four-leggeds, not two-leggeds.
Now
Right?
that changes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mike, before I change gears a little bit, anything to add to that end from what you've seen in your conversations?
Well, not to add, just another question, more around the service, because this is really like a full scale consulting, right? Like I'm sort of speaking probably for a lot of our audience members. If I hear of someone that's in financial services or financial planning, that I'll kind of put them in a box of like, okay, give me your money and I will deploy it somewhere. And we just keep doing that. This sounds far more encompassing, right? Yeah. So I guess I want to ask a question on like, you know, for people working with you, like a fee for service or like a commission type base, because it's very wide ranging.
Oh, that's a great question.
And she just met with her accountant before this call.
Yeah, I did. So I'm going to be honest. The reason I built Steady Gait out the way it was, or the way it is, I should say, is because the advisor that I had when I was 24 is the same advisor who bought my dad's practice. And I never learned anything. I actually never knew what I was doing. It was always sign a check, sign this form, we'll see you next year. I didn't know what I was doing. And so when Steady Gait was built out and I asked veterinarians what they wanted everything. They wanted someone to help talk to them about contracts, talk about debt, do all these things. I am not a fee-for-service advisor. Truthfully, I don't think veterinarians can afford a fee-for-service model at this point in time. I think the debt to income ratio, it still needs work. And I mean, I'm an advocate for that and I want to help people, but I do get paid through embedded commissions. The contract work I do, the debt management stuff, there's no service. Like I don't charge a fee for that. I think it's just, as an advisor, I have an obligation as a licensed designated advisor, I have an obligation to Canadians to educate them, right? And it's that education where I hope I can build those trusting relationships where people want to work with Steady Gait and they see it's a different experience than going to a traditional financial advisor that just wants to invest your money. Because those investments mean nothing to anyone if something goes wrong.
I'm glad I asked that, because it's the traditional model it's all about assets under management. Just focus on growing that number. But yeah, like you said, you're building relationships. So that's a super cool approach.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I'll just add, like, one of the first things, Jonathan, I think I showed this to you when we first started talking about the podcast, is I have a process, and like, it's a 1 through 5 process that I show. And like, step number 1 is debt. Step number 2 is insurance. And the reason I talk about debt first is because it's what veterinarians are stressing about. And if we think about the 8 realms of wellness, if we do not take care of our financial wellness, it's going to impact our mental wellness, which will impact our physical wellness. And so the debt management piece is like the most important part to any person. And then if you owe someone, you love someone, you're going to have insurance, right? Let's protect our income. Let's protect the 8 years of school, if not longer, that you've done to become a doctor. And then the investments is like, well, they mean nothing if they're not insured, but if you insure them, then the investments can actually stay invested longer. So if we're in a down volatile market like we are right now, and you needed to pull money out, it's the worst time to do so. So we transfer the risk to an insurance company. But what advisors, not all advisors, but there are advisors who go after the investments, right? And they go after that first because that is how they get paid the most money, is assets under management. How much do you earn and how much you have invested? That is a self-serving tactic, right? It only serves the advisor, not the client.
Jillian, when you're speaking with experienced vets, new grads, or those that are a couple of years out, etc., what other pieces do you feel they need to be aware of? Life challenges outside of the actual practice of veterinary medicine. What are some of those tactics for conversation, whether you're guiding them towards a contract, other areas in their life they need to work on? Because I know your service is quite full encompassing.
I think we're always working on ourselves, but truthfully, I think it's so important that, this is what I talk with vet students about, is find a practice that aligns with your values. Like, who do you want to be as a veterinarian? And find a practice that will allow you to be who you are, because you're so much more than just a veterinarian, right? I think the contracts are so important. It protects the employee, it protects the employer. Everyone has a need for that contract. But like, I had a client or a prospect who messaged me and said, can you help me with this contract? I said, sure, send it over. She's like, well, I don't actually have a contract. Like, what do you mean? And she said, they never gave me one because they said, well, it wouldn't stand up anyway, so I don't have a contract for you to sign. And I said, well, that's a red flag. Everyone should have a contract. And so it's finding these like red flags and helping these students navigate them.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
So that's one of them for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Another theme that we were picking up on in our pre-recording talk was accountability. So I will bring that up. I believe the direct quote is, your life is 100% your responsibility. Jillian,
Yeah.
I love it. I see that in the work that we've now done together over the last 6 months, or just under a year here, that you take that very seriously. What does it mean from your context, and how do you share that with veterinarians that may not feel the same?
Yeah, well, not everyone is meant to be a Steady Gait client, right? My dad actually is the one who has always said that to me, is like, he always coached us to make choices. And sometimes the choices we made were the wrong ones, right? But we learned from them, but we had to take responsibility for the choices that we made. So if we have all the information, if I give a client all the information and I'm there to help support you through some of these decisions, and you go against them and it fails, you have to be accountable for it. There is no one here that's going to pick you up and fix it, right? Like, you're over the age of 18. We are now adults. Like, my tagline is, because adulting is hard. Learning to adult is falling on your face and making mistakes and picking yourself up, for sure.
Excellent.
Yeah.
If you look at a percentage of your clients, and this is so subjective, it's probably a horrible question, what percentage would you say are actively adulting versus those that are probably just brushing it off to another year?
Oh, I am very fortunate, actually. I think the people I work with are actively involved in their finances. So I wouldn't know the percent. I want to say 3/4 of them, like 3/4 of my client base are very well engaged. They want to have reviews, even if it's just like once a year, we talk about what's going on. But I think it's so important because they're starting to learn, right? And they want to know, like, okay, I want to buy a house. And they've heard all about the first time home savers plan. Like, I got an email right before the podcast. Jillian, can we open this up now? They are actively involved because I think it's the way we discuss money with them, right?
Excellent.
It's, yeah.
I have a quick question. I suspect your clients the percentage is going to skew higher because they've reached out, right?
Mhm.
So the percentage of people that haven't even reached out, whether it's fear or whatever, if any resource maybe or tip for them, if they just want to build like a little more confidence before they reach out, because sometimes people will be like, I want to have a little bit of knowledge and then I'll make the phone call or the email.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, it's to read. Don't go on social media and like follow TikTokers, because 97% of day traders fail. And of the 3%, 1% got lucky. So we don't want to follow them. It's really about traditional reading or listening to podcasts of people that are designated advisors, licensed advisors. Kelly Keene has a fabulous book called Broke Girl, Rich Girl, or Rich Girl, Broke Girl. So it's something like that. It's really down to basics about money, and it's an easy read. You could read it in a day just to gain some confidence that you know what you're talking about,
Excellent. Any other educational tools, or do you partake in any conferences, etc., that you would recommend to individuals to go and widen their scope of knowledge?
Oh, there are some financial literacy programs out there. Actually, the Canadian government has an unbelievable budgeting tool that you can actually download. A client showed it to me, actually. See, this is how engaged they are. They sent me this budget that they put together, and it shows, like, if you like colors, it's all like the colorful graphs, and you can input it. You can add like pet insurance, whatever it is that you're paying for, and it will allocate all the money for you.
Excellent. We will try and find that budget, and we'll share that in the notes for anybody that wants to go and geek out on it. That's perfect.
Yeah, it's great.
Excellent. Well, with that then, Jillian, we are going to quickly move over into the impact round.
Okay.
Short questions, short answers. We did not set you up for this, so I am interested to see what comes through.
Okay.
Our first question, are you a cat or a dog person?
I'm a dog person.
I knew that was going to be the answer. True or false? And this one's interesting with your dad in history, is I knew I wanted to be in the financial services industry since I was a kid.
False.
Nice.
Yeah.
How would your friends describe what you do for a living?
I don't even think my friends know what I do for a living. I actually don't even know if clients know the full impact of what I do for a living.
So what's the answer?
Okay, well, I think they look at me as an insurance person, truthfully.
Yep. And it's so much more than that.
It is.
What is your favorite hobby?
Oh my gosh. Traveling. I love, it could be a road trip. It could go down the road with my dogs. It's just getting out and moving and seeing new experiences.
Excellent. What in this world are you most grateful for?
Oh my God. My dad. Yeah. I mean, he really has impacted my entire career. When he died, it broke me, like literally broke me, but made me want to just be better, right? Like I experienced everything I tell clients about doing for themselves is what my dad did for my brother and I. And so I can tell that story firsthand. And as much as I appreciated him from the beginning, it's like, even when he died, it was a learning experience for us.
Amazing. That might be the most impactful, grateful question we've ever had, Mike.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
It is a great one. Jillian, we're already at a close. There's about 20 other questions that I wanted to, but I was going to then make you feel uncomfortable. And I guess that'll have to be for another episode. We likely are on the phone now weekly, if not texting back and forth, as our worlds have collided over the last 8 months. And I'm going to say collided, not even come together, collided in a big way. Jillian and I, we were, for all of our listeners, we were negotiating against each other on a contract, which came to a successful conclusion for a veterinarian. This is how this world works. It's amazing. And, as shared in the intros to come, we do business together as well, too, which is fantastic, and really respect what you are doing in the veterinary profession, not what you're trying to do, but what you are doing. And it takes many individuals, it takes a community to be able to, bring up and bring these important topics to the surface, of which many we didn't even discuss today, around mental health, equity, EDI, all these pieces that are involved in veterinary medicine in 2023. So my hat's off to you, huge amount of respect.
Thank you.
People want to get a hold of you, Jillian, and learn more about this process that is Steady Gait Planning, how do they do that?
So you can DM us at Steady Gait Planning Inc. on Instagram. You can email me at jillian@steadygaitplanning.com. Yeah.
Those are the two ways of best getting a hold.
Two ways.
Mike, anything in conclusion?
Just thank you. I think your approach is very, very unique. Very cool. I really like that you're putting so much into the relationship up front. So it's nice to hear.
Thank you.
Well, with that, Jillian, as always for our podcast, the last message goes to our guest. What message do you want to leave for the veterinary community?
I would like to just remind you all that being a veterinarian is not your identifier. It's just what you do. So you have to keep finding those things that make you special and who you are.
Thank you for listening to the Veterinary Project Podcast. As a recap on behalf of our hosts, the Veterinary Project Podcast will be releasing new episodes every 2 weeks. So be sure to tune in as we bring you more conversations aimed at helping you enjoy a life well lived. If you enjoyed what you heard on the show and want to stay in the know, please like, love, and or subscribe to the podcast on the listening platform of your choosing, as we're available on all the usual suspects. If you know of others who may benefit from these conversations, we'd love it if you shared the show with them. This helps us to grow our community and reach more and more veterinary professionals, just like you. Speaking of which, if you would like to get connected with more like-minded individuals who are joining us on this journey, please send us a message via Instagram @The Veterinary Project, and we'll invite you to be a part of our private Facebook group. General feedback, requests for information, or requests to be a guest on the show can also be sent via direct message to our Instagram @The Veterinary Project. Dr. Michael Bugg and Dr. Jonathan Light, thank you for listening to the show, and we'll catch you again in 2 weeks for another episode of the Veterinary Project Podcast. Bye for now.